Well, episode 3 of Finding Hope in Your Finances. This episode is titled The Easy Finance Fix. Some of you may remember the old Staples commercial, Staples office supplies, business supplies, and they had this slogan, that was easy, and they had this little red button, and
that was easy.
And we want to proclaim to you in this episode that finding the fix to your finances or finding the hope to your finances is really that easy. Romans chapter 12 verse 2 says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds." And it really is that easy. And what I mean by that is we have to change the way we think. If you're in a place where you're not experiencing freedom in your finances, you have to change the way you think. And here's how we change the way we think. The solution to your financial problems, here's the bottom line. It's a cash flow problem. It's a cash flow. All the solution to all of your financial problems, it's a cash flow problem. And there are 2 ways to increase cash flow. 2 ways. 1, you increase your income, or 2, you decrease your expenses.
That was easy.
Right? There are only 2 ways to solve a cash flow problem. You either got to bring in more money, or you got to make sure that you're not spending as much money. So you increase your income or you decrease your expenses. So let's talk about increasing income first, because that's what everybody wants to talk about, right? So if we're going to change the way we think, if we're going to look at this as a cash flow problem, one of the things we can do to increase our cash flow is to increase our income. So let's assume that you're working and you're making an income. Maybe if you're in a married household, you have 2 incomes. One of the things you can do to increase your income is make more money. So you can look at finding a job that brings home more money. And it's not rocket science, right? Like that's one of the ways that we can increase our income is to make more money. But we don't just do that by finding a new or a different job all the time. There are other ways we can do that.
And I wanted to say this, when we first went to our teaching, and even before that, this was always the answer that I thought would help us. I always thought if we could just get a different job, really it was you more than me, because I was staying home. So I thought if Ryan would just get a different job that paid more, then we would be fine. I always thought that was the answer. It could be the answer, but it's not the only answer. Another way you could do it is get a part-time job. Actually, both of us have part-time jobs that we do just extra.
Even today. That started back when we were living in financial bondage, not in financial freedom. And we don't need those part-time jobs to stay in financial freedom, but we discovered what that does for our cash flow at the end of the day. And these things, finding an extra job or a part-time job, they may not always be permanent. It may just be a temporary thing to temporarily help you find some extra income. Another thing you can do is find a side hustle. And so you can find something on the side that may not be a part-time job that you go to regularly, but something that helps you bring in some extra income. Like maybe, I don't know, you could sell
something.
I don't know. You can sell, there's all kinds of programs out there where you can get into something like that and do something on the side to bring in a little extra income. Like I said, it may not be regular, but it may help every once in a while. And then there are a couple of things, and these are probably more temporary things, and we're going to use these things in episode 4 when we talk about slaying the debt dragon, that you can do to increase income. And the first one is, and I love to say this, it's use it or sell it.
And what he means by that is we're going to sell everything because that's just your mentality.
We're
going to sell it, we don't use it, get rid of it.
It's really not what I mean by it, but here's what I mean. Take a look around. If there are things that you're not using, why are you keeping them? Why not sell them and make the money off of them? And I don't mean things that you didn't just use today. Now, Amy would argue, if we didn't use it in 24 hours, we're going to sell it. I don't mean that, but I mean things that you really haven't used. And oftentimes we look around and go, oh, well, I might use that. And 2 years later, it's still sitting in the same place and you haven't used it. Just walk out into your garage, if that applies to you, and look at all the things in your garage that you haven't used in a very long time and ask yourself the question, why do I still have these things? We used to, back when Amy and I started our getting out of debt journey, we would have this thing called a garage sale where you put things out in the garage or out in the yard, a yard sale, and people would come by and they would buy all these things up. Now there's so many easier ways to do that.
You can do it on Trading Up or some kind of online.
There's all kinds of online programs where you can take things and put them online and sell them and make the money off of them because you're not going to use them probably more than likely. Here's the second thing that you can do. If you use it, sell it. And this is the one Amy really struggles with. But let me give you an example. So when we first started getting out of debt, we looked around our house and we found all of these things that we weren't using and we sold them. And then we found some things that we were using and we sold them. Because we really decided at the end of the day, they were things that we didn't have to have.
Right.
They weren't musts. And so I'll give you an example. Like we had this patio table out on our patio. And we live in Lubbock. If you're familiar with Lubbock, there are like 3 days out of the entire year you can actually sit out and enjoy your patio, right? And so we decided, why do we need this table? We're not even using it that much. And so we sold it, we got rid of it. Now I'll actually tell you today, we have a patio, we have a very beautiful patio table and furniture. So we haven't always lived that way, but there was a time temporarily where even if we used it, we sold it.
I got rid of some keyboards I had at the time, and that was hard because I play the piano and I loved the keyboards, but we just decided to make some sacrifices to get us where we wanted to be. And so one of the things we did is I had a couple of keyboards and we sold those. So I guess my wisdom in that would be, or maybe not wisdom, but my encouragement would be, don't sell something that's sentimental, that has some kind of meaning. Like if you have your grandmother's china and it's been passed down and it's very important to your family, don't sell that. But if it's things that maybe later on you can replace, that you're maybe not using all the time, that aren't essential to your family, those are things that we decided to make a decision to sell.
Yeah, so Amy sold a couple of keyboards that she had, but she also has an upright piano. We still have it to this day. We didn't sell it. It's very sentimental. Even to this day, we won't sell it because it's very sentimental. So there are, and this is not an exhaustive list, but think, cash flow. How can I increase my cash flow? I can increase my income. And what are some ways that I can increase my income? Now, to Amy's point, let us leave you with this on terms of increasing income. It's impossible to out-earn stupidity. And I can say that because Amy and I made a lot of stupid mistakes with our money. In fact, we were village idiots. And so, and to Amy's point, we always thought that the answer was just making more money. Yeah. The problem with that is if you don't begin to apply some of the other practical concepts that we're going to talk about, especially when it comes to debt, you will never out-earn your financial mistakes. And so increasing income is not the only solution. You can also decrease expenses. And to me, this is the biggest area where we learn to live in financial freedom or find hope in our finances, is learn to cut our spending. And there are lots of different ways. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, but we can just give you several things. All of these things we did, and there's just some things that you can do to reduce expenses as well. So number one, reduce your expenses. So look at your expenses and figure out where you can cut some of those expenses. So like, for example, if you have a gym membership that costs you $30 a month, but you can join a gym that only costs you $10 a month, that's kind of a no-brainer. And you say that's a no-brainer, but then you're like, but I don't like the gym that only costs $10 a month because it doesn't offer this, or it doesn't have that, or it doesn't have this, or listen, you have to make sacrifices if you want to find hope in your finances. Good. If you keep doing things the way you've always done them, you're going to keep getting what you've always gotten. And so you have to look at doing things differently. So you may not always have to work out at the gym that only costs $10 a month, but for a season, you may need to get rid of your $30 gym membership and pay a $10 gym membership, or even better, cut your $30 gym membership, buy some workout stuff that you can use at home and work out at home for free after that initial expense. So go through your expenses and find places where you can cut spending.
Another one is, we titled this Quit Your Addictions, and that could mean lots of different things, but I think something that probably all of us are guilty of or can relate to is eating out. Sometimes if you've never tracked this, it's terrible to track and watch how much money we spend on just eating out.
In fact, when we went through Conquering Debt and we began to track our spending, because we had never really done that before, and we began to track our spending, one of the things that we tracked that appalled us the most was how much money we were spending eating out every month.
At Starbucks, Sonic, for our son Jeb, it would be Freddy's cheeseburgers. I don't know what it is for you, but there's just something out there, and you just don't even realize how much money you're spending on those things each month. So if you think about, if I eat out 3 times a week, $10 a meal, which is pretty cheap, track that over, a month. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
$120.
$120. So you could save that by making that PB&J sandwich before you leave the house.
Another thing you can do when you're looking at all your expenses and want to find places you can cut is perform services yourself that you typically pay for. So one of the biggest ones here in this area is like in your budget, you may allow for a housekeeper to come in and clean your house weekly or every other week or every month. But in reality, that's something that you can do yourself, and you can save the money there. So again, this may not be, there was a season when we had 2 teenage boys and we were gone all the time chasing them and doing different things, and that we had someone that helped us in this area. And it was very beneficial because there were times when that allowed us to, whatever, if our Saturday mornings were dedicated to cleaning or whatever, then we could spend time with the boys or whatever. And so we're not saying forever, but maybe for a season. And there are some other ways you can look at maybe doing things on your own that you might pay for. Washing your car, whatever it may be. You can find things that you might pay for on a monthly basis that you can do on your own.
Something else maybe to consider is canceling subscriptions, whether this is like some type of a magazine, some kind of TV package you've got.
Netflix, even canceling your cable subscription and going to a streaming service. I mean, there are lots of things that you can do to cut expenses there. And then, again, this is not an exhaustive list, but let us just encourage you from our own story to get rid of your minimum monthly payments.
Yeah.
Get rid of your debt. And that is one of the biggest ways, I think, to reduce your spending. In fact, in episode 4, we're going to teach you how to increase your income and take that income to put onto your debt, therefore decreasing your expenses. Remember, we're thinking differently. It's really simple. It's a cash flow problem. And the only way to change your cash flow is to either increase your income or decrease your expenses. And it's really not or, it's both and. Mm-hmm. You can increase your income and decrease your expenses. But don't think the only solution is just to make more money. If you continue to live the way you're living, you will always have an income problem. But if you learn how to decrease your expenses, you can find hope in your finances.